Now, in its 11th year, this is GabNet. Talk like you've never heard it before.
Hey, everybody, live from Harlem in New York City. This is a Ramble, and I'm Alex. And here's a rerun of an interview. A good one, too. That gentleman sitting right there is Mike Chisholm. Yeah,
gentleman.
with
Let's
all
use
his,
that word gently.
all
Oh,
his
man.
late show gear around him. And a picture of Shecky.
Right there.
Yeah.
Our boy.
Mike
Our boy. I wouldn't know you if it wasn't for Rick.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't know Rick if it weren't for, Steve Weiner.
Yeah, Steve Weiner. Our boy
Life
Steve.
is a bunch of coincidences, isn't it?
Oh, man. And the more that go by, Alex, I more believing that we are in some sort of simulation, or I believe there are no coincidences. Like, my whole thing, like the idea, I've become friends with Robert Morton. Robert Morton loved you, was a fan of yours. You know, getting to know Rick, that got me here. And if it wasn't for being on your Monday show, the Letterman podcast wouldn't even exist. I don't know, man. There are so many coincidences that it makes me think it's not coincidental.
Well, as somebody said, that's a coincidence. Well, that's what a coincidence is.
Yeah.
You know.
There's just so many of them. There's so many of them.
Yeah. Well, we assigned to them some kind of supernatural ability or function.
Yep.
And I don't know that I agree with that. You know.
You don't believe in the law of attraction?
Coincidence is just what it is. Coincidence. Yeah. The word says it all. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have never met Rick if I didn't know Steve Weiner.
Yep.
And I wouldn't know Rick if Steve Weiner hadn't decided to make Rick a birthday present for me or for him.
Yeah. For him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll never get tired of that story. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I was a very cheap birthday present. No, it's because Rick enjoyed my radio show, and
Sure.
So Steve, because he knew me, figured he would have me show up at a birthday party for Rick as kind of a present to Rick. So I showed up. He asked me to show up, and I did.
Alex, that must have happened a lot in your career. You must have had a lot of people who knew you or had access who would leverage that for, not for bad things.
Many times
you must have had that a lot.
Many times I would turn it down. That particular time I didn't. I guess because I kind of liked Steve Weiner.
Sure.
So I was kind of doing it as a favor to him, not as a favor to a guy I didn't even know.
Yep.
And then I met him, and we became, right then, fast friends. And we stayed that way. You know, what happens is, in this business, you move from place to place. That was in New York. I moved to California. Now, you move to California, you make a whole bunch of different friends. You hardly talk to the old ones.
Yeah.
I talk to Rick every Saturday. It was usually about 1 o'clock. This went on for years, So he was always my friend, whether I was in California or whether I was in New York or whether I was somewhere else, Mm-hmm. And he's the one that ultimately convinced me to come back to New York because he felt I could get a job here, and I got a job at Sirius XM, So that was my life, okay?
I can see how you two would talk a lot when you were doing live, because at the end of the day, you're both in the comedy world in different respects, and you have people on your show, and he has people that were on whichever incarnation of the Letterman show it happened to be. You two had lots to talk about when it came to that stuff that was constantly refreshing itself. If you had somebody who maybe was promoting a movie that was on late night or late show, and then they'd come over to your show, whatever, you two always had industry stuff to talk about that you were both interested in.
Yeah, we had industry stuff, but it was we talked more about trivia.
Yeah.
And he gave me a real insight into old movies. Now, I never was into silent films before I met Rick. and he turned me on to them. And I always enjoyed stuff that existed before I was born.
Yeah.
And he lived entirely in that world of things that existed before he was born. And I think the trouble with people today is they really don't care much for things that happened before they were born.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking today about your podcast, David Letterman, all of that. You're going to find this hard to believe, but there are people. How long has Letterman been off the air?
It'll be 10 years in May that he left the Late Show.
10 years in May. Okay. Yeah. There are kids right now who are 15 years old who never heard of David Letterman.
Absolutely.
As the years go by, Dave will become more of a ghost.
Yep.
And that the idea of even doing a Letterman podcast would be a waste of time. Because you know what I'm saying? I mean, not for you, not 100%. For you because it interests you, but for a public as a whole, they move on to other stuff. I mean, there are kids out there who do not know who John Lennon was.
Yep. Well, and the example I use is Carson. Like I would say this to Rick, when we were discussing the idea of me even doing this show, and I said it's astounding to me. Johnny Carson was the biggest star in the world, and from the entertainment perspective, he was the biggest star in the world. At that time. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And now there are so many people who have never even, they don't even know who Johnny Carson is. And to me, it's like, okay, if that happens to Dave, it's going to happen a little bit slower because of this show that we're doing here. And I think that was part of the.
I don't think you're going to slow it down. You can't stop time. And you can't stop the fact that, let me put it this way to people. You never heard of David Letterman? You don't care about David Letterman? He wasn't on your radar? Go back and watch his stuff on YouTube, and you will be endlessly entertained. And I'm saying that because I'm not being an old fart. You will just entertainment. Funny is funny. Funny remains funny. It is eternal. Okay?
Yes.
And if you don't watch David Letterman, you're depriving yourself of a good laugh. That's all.
Yes.
Period. The same thing is true of Carson, although in a way, I oddly think, and Dave would hate hearing this, that Johnny Carson was not as good as David Letterman.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I think Dave's wit is razor sharp, and Johnny had great wit, but Dave's, in my opinion, is a league ahead of it.
Yeah, well, the thing was with Carson, when I was out of work at one point. A lot of points I was out of work. I was out of work, and it was late at night, and I turned on the Carson show.
Yeah.
And I didn't watch the Carson show that much, and I watched him, and I said, this guy is a master of his art. I was just, as one broadcaster looking at another broadcaster,
Yep.
I was absolutely awed at his skill. Well, that was before Dave.
Yeah.
And when Dave happened, Dave brought to the table something so fresh and so new and much funnier, by the way, than Carson ever got. Carson was glib. Carson knew how to interview people, let them pretty much handle the show, get the laughs, I think actually, if he were to be honest with us, Letterman was a terrible interviewer in the beginning. If you look at the early shows, terrible interviewer. He got better and better and better.
Yep.
But that was never the thing I think he enjoyed doing most. I think he enjoyed all the other stuff.
Yep.
And the interviews simply filled out time.
It's interesting. You go back and you think about a guy like Tom Snyder. And when in the mid '90s, when Dave got a chance to help sculpt the 12:30 time slot at CBS, he brought over Tom Snyder, and there was a big press conference, and at that press conference, Dave said that he believed, and this is before VCRs and whatnot. So after the Tomorrow Show, which would be on after Johnny Carson ended, Dave said that he probably watched 80% of Tom Snyder's broadcasts. And now this is a guy who was doing long form. And so I look at where Dave is at in his career right now, And the influence of Tom Snyder was there from the very, very beginning. And by that point in his career, he had become a much better interviewer. I couldn't agree with you more. One of my favorite video collections on Don Giller's channel, let's give Don Giller's channel a plug, as well as the Letterman channel, you're right, endless entertainment that is timeless, is the talk show series. And I think it's 5 or 6 parts, and each one is like 90 minutes long, and it's in chronological order for each talk show host.
Yeah.
Every appearance they made on Letterman's program. And you go through and you watch him at the beginning where he's interviewing Jack Parr, or he's interviewing, Steve Allen and whatnot. And you see, the adolescence in interviewing at that point. But then you get and you watch it in order, and you see the progression and how good he gets in between visits. And he becomes a master at it, kind of like what you were talking about with Carson. And I look at what Dave's doing now on Netflix, and he is a master like Tom Snyder was when it comes to long form.
I feel the interviews he's doing on Netflix are not quite as good. He's not doing it as well as he used to.
You think?
Yeah, I think being.
Did you see the Miley Cyrus episode that just came out?
Yeah, it was a good episode, but it wasn't great.
Interesting.
I think that because he's been off the air for quite a while. Listen to me. For quite a while, he's lost his chops. He's
you don't do it every day. I mean, if you don't do it every day, you're not
exactly,
gonna.
Exactly. I mean, that's why I keep doing this. It's like a muscle.
Yep.
If you don't use it, it atrophies. Or if you don't use it for a while, you have to run a lot in order to get that muscle going again. But in the short forms that he's doing on Netflix, he doesn't have the opportunity. So he's really just in, what can I call it? He's in some kind of mode where he's just going back to what he did.
I look at the episode that came out recently. They didn't put it in the new season, but they just released it as a one shot with John Mulaney, and I really thought. The thing about the program is, and you might be right, there might be opportunities that get missed in things where he's going through the long form, but you could tell how carefully and meticulously it's made. Just in the cuts, you've got the scene with John in Chicago in front of an intimate theater, which is nice, but then you got the cuts of him back at his school, and then the dinner with John and his dad, talking about some pretty vulnerable things from 3 guys who I wouldn't classify as vulnerable people.
Yeah, and it was good. Wait a minute, I'll agree with you. It was good, but it wasn't great. It wasn't.
Gotcha.
It wasn't what I want out of Dave.
In your mind, what is Great Dave?
Well, Great Dave died with the Late Show.
With Late Show.
Okay. It died with Late Show, and it probably died earlier than that. It probably died at heart operation.
You think? And there's a lot of folks who believe the change after that. Yeah.
Yeah. In the beginning, before heart operation, he would go out and be at a Jack in the Box, trying to serve food to people. Okay.
Yep.
In post heart problem, he would send, like, what's his name, the guy who runs the deli.
Send Rupert.
Rupert out with an earphone and tell him what to do.
Yep.
So the whole energy changed.
Yep.
Okay. And then he was kind of in what I call automatic mode. Prior to that, he had the energy, he had the spirit, everything. Yep. After that, it changed. So there is a difference there. Talking to folks on the show, on our show, who worked for the show, there is definitely a line of demarcation, if I'm using that term right. I don't think I am. There is definitely a line where it was pre-heart surgery and post-heart surgery. Dave at that point recognized, okay, I'm getting older. I need to conserve energy and use it where it's necessary. He wouldn't come down to rehearsal anymore at that point. Just talking with Anton the other day, and because Dave used to come around and mess around with Anton's drums all the time. He used to get behind Anton's drum kit and muck around with the drums. Well, that stopped after the heart surgery. Mm-hmm. And he'd be up in the office, and the feed, of course, would go up there, and he would get the gist of what the show was going to be about. But he would save some of the segments and whatnot for the actual show, so he could give the energy to the show. So there's a definite, and noticing that tone is for certain. I think there's also a sense of vulnerability once you've had your heart worked on. you know,
Yes.
and so therefore your the things that once seemed important to you no longer are important.
Yes.
You know, I mean, I don't
Could
know.
not agree more.
I've never had a heart problem. I never had a heart operation, but I can imagine how that would change you. You know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That first night back. I mean, and, you know, my dad had a quadruple bypass, long time ago, and I remember when he came back. At that point, you know, he had to fly to Vancouver to get it, and carefully, gingerly come home, that sort of a thing. And his emotions had changed at that point.
That's
Forever
right.
changed. But
Right.
but at the beginning, especially, they were right at the surface. And if you watch the episode where they after coming back for the heart surgery, where Dave brings out the surgical team and whatnot, like even as he's about to introduce them, he gets choked up. And for Dave, that is a very rare instance. It didn't happen very often at all that he would get choked up. But he even started to say, "And now the people who saved my life." And as he starts to say "save my life," it's right there. Harry being born, I think, is another example of what you're talking
I
about.
think
That
that
vulnerability.
changed. I think that changed his life. You know,
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that edge that he had, the thing that we liked about him was the edge. What we
Yes.
liked was the how can we call it, the laughing in the face of your employer. You know, things like that. Stuff that he did that was bold. After those incidents, after the heart operation and Harry being born,
Yep.
that all went away. There was
Well, it would have little moments. You'd see little moments, like the John McCain moment, when John McCain did his little dipsy doodle, and that was, as far as I'm concerned, that is a modern classic television Letterman
In
moment.
case people don't know what we're talking about, Letterman was supposed to have McCain on the show, and McCain said he couldn't. He had to fly back to Washington, and there were some things that were
to
happening
save
in
the
the
economy, he had to
country.
fly back to Washington to save the economy. That's what he had
Save
to
the
do.
economy, and then they tune over to the feed. CBS has feeds of all their shows as they're being done, and they look, and there's John McCain doing the
Katie Couric.
with Katie Couric, right? And so Dave just went off on him. Well, I think anybody would have gone off on him. Yeah.
Oh, it was perfect. It was one of my first conversations with Rick, when Rick and I connected, and he, you know, realized I wasn't a crazy person, or at least the bad crazy, whatever I am. That was one of the first moments. Vinny Favali, that's one of the very first moments I asked him about. It's one of my favorite Letterman moments of all time. And it was in '08. It was late Letterman. The other one, too, is, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I hear where people are coming from when you say this. I get it. I love the classic late night, the inventive stuff, the stuff that was deconstructing the talk show. That's the evolution, and that's a part of the evolution. But when I think about 2010, Dave, when Conan went through his dust up, Late Shift 2 was happening at NBC. And for 2 weeks, Dave was, as far as I'm concerned, the best that he has ever been, going through and just throwing rocks and lampooning NBC every night.
Was that
that
post heart attack?
That was 2010, man. That was 2010 when Conan lost the Tonight
Well,
Show.
but when was the heart?
99.
9?
So
Really?
it was before 9/11. Yeah. So, and 9, okay. Oh, we're leaving out 9/11. 9/11 also.
That was brilliant. That was brilliant. Yeah. The speech he gave about, because he was a New Yorker and it happened in New York, and he was, going to talk about it.
Were you at Sirius for 9/11?
No, I was in California.
You were still in Cali. Okay.
And I'm sleeping, and the phone rings, and I pick it up, and it's Rick.
Oh my God.
And he says to me, "Are you seeing what's happening?" I said, "What do you mean, what's happening?" He says, "Oh, well, go over and tune on one of your news channels." And I turned it on, and there's this building that I know of as the World Trade Center is smoking. I said, "What the hell happened?" He says, "A plane crashed into it." And as we're talking, the second plane crashes into it. And I said, "I guess this isn't just an accident." Yeah.
Man.
When I think about Rick, I think about all the times he was there as part of my life on major moments, and that was a major moment. By the way, earlier on, it looked like we went out of sync, is what happened. So I went to another feed here.
Oh, you and I. Oh, okay.
Oh,
I haven't. It's been seamless on my end.
Oh no, because you're watching it on Zoom. I'm recording it on OBS, and sometimes the thing goes out of sync, and I can't ever figure out why. But it does. So
the ones and zeros, and you've been, as a broadcaster, you've been a guy who has been at the forefront when everything went from kind of the analog to digital, that sort of thing. What do you prefer? Like, do you like the old school better? And I know you're nostalgic and whatnot too. Like, do you like the old school way, or are you okay with the ones and zeros and the things that technology has brought with it?
Well, I'm okay with the ones and zeros. I don't mind them. They've never, I always been into science and stuff like that, and always liked anything that improved what I did.
Yeah.
But I do think that the method of communication has changed, and what it's gone from is when I was a broadcaster doing radio.
Yep.
Okay. It was a whole different can of beans. Mm-hmm. And we were professionals who did a show. We prepared for our show in whatever way we prepared for it, and we did it. And they were long form. They were like 3-4 hours, And today, any amateur can have a show. Because
thank God. Oh my God. Thank God for that.
Thank God for that amateur that I'm talking to. But I don't know if that's good. I don't know that when we only had, I don't know, 5,000 broadcast licenses in this country, if that was as terrible as 3 million, 4 million people, I think it's even more than that, doing podcasts. And most of them are amateurs.
Yep.
The only ones that are professionals are out-of-work radio people. So I think that has changed. You would think as technology got better, things would get better, would get more inventive. Tell me of one podcast anywhere that even approaches Letterman.
Like, I look at that, I don't think anything touches Letterman, and that's my thing.
Yeah,
like,
but,
I don't think
what
anything
I'm
in late
saying
night.
is,
I don't think anything in late night television touches Letterman.
You would think that if Letterman had created that permission, so to speak, that you would find somebody doing a podcast that's better than Letterman.
Yeah,
because they would have learned from Letterman.
I could not agree more. I could not agree more, and to me, that is part of the reason why the posterity of what it is that we're trying to do here with this is to show how special that show was. And it's not just Dave, it's the people that he surrounded himself with, because he surrounded himself with the best writers and the best producers and the best director, and a combination of old school show business and yet new school cutting edge humor, that sort of a thing, and he put them all together as one, which is why we do the show that we do. I agree. Like don't get me wrong, I love Kimmel, but to me Kimmel is doing his very best to pay homage to Dave and have a lot of fun while he's doing it, and which is great. I just don't think it's anything new. I don't think anything out there is new the way Letterman was new. And that's in the television world, that's in the podcast world. I mean, I look at what a guy like John Oliver is doing, and okay, he kind of reinvented what the Daily Show did. And the Daily Show, Jon Stewart went over to the Daily Show, and by the way, Madeline Smithberg, a Letterman alum, he was a huge part of creating what the Daily Show was. I think the Daily Show was just as inventive as what Dave did for late night.
Yeah.
But what's new? I mean, who's the biggest broadcaster, quote unquote, internet broadcaster on the planet? It's Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is bigger than CNN. His audience,
and in my opinion, he sucks.
There you go. But he's also gives people the Carson bump. We wouldn't have Kill Tony, which is one of the biggest shows out there. Kill Tony's a really neat. Okay, if you were to throw out the idea of something that's really inventive and caught on, I would throw out the idea of Kill Tony. And
I never heard of Kill Tony.
You know what, Alex? You may actually really like Kill Tony. You might like Kill Tony. I'm gonna send you some stuff. You might actually. This might be right up your alley.
It's a podcast. I can get it online.
Yeah, it's a live show. Yes, it is absolutely. But it's a live show that happens, and the premise is Tony Hinchcliffe, comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, with a bunch of his cohorts, and people come up and they have 60 seconds. comedians, amateur, professional, whatever. They've got 60 seconds, and it combines everything from a talk show that includes people you've never heard of, which I think Dave was a master at. It includes stand-up, of course, which all the talk shows have always rooted themselves in. It includes that. But it also includes like a bit of a roast mentality as well. And there's a lot of spontaneous wit, and there's crowd participation. So Kill Tony, I think in the modern age might be something, but again, it's completely different.
Listen, we've run out of time here. So why don't you stick around and we'll do another one of these. Just stay where you are. But I finally got us back in sync.
Good.
So for people who are watching us and we went out of sync, I think just close your eyes if you watch this and it's out of sync, because it's just a radio show anyway. So doesn't matter. Anyway, thank you so much, Mike. This has been fascinating. It's been good. And I got the next one. I'm going to ask you some very interesting questions. So
can't wait.
Everybody should make sure that'll be on in a week or so. Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Mike.
I appreciate you very, very more than you'll know, Alex. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Now, in its 11th year, this is GabNet. Talk like you've never heard it before.
Yeah, there he was. That was Mike Chisholm. We ran that interview because I had nothing to run tonight, and I figured he was really good when we did him the original time, and I wanted to see him, let more of you see him. There is nobody really calling tonight. We just have Jeff Stein waiting, and that's about it. Now, last night I said I might not do a show tonight, but I decided to do a show tonight. And that being the case, nobody is calling. So if I don't hear from enough people in the next, 5 minutes or so, I'm just going to call it quits for tonight. Why not? It doesn't hurt. Doesn't hurt to just take the night off, But anyway, let me just bring in Jeff here so that he can... Hi, Jeff. How are you?
Good.
Yeah.
How are you?
Well, we don't have anybody waiting here.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know. I may cut this short, So how you doing today? Where are you? Still in Atlanta or wherever?
Yeah, Atlanta, and got to see some kids that I haven't seen for a year or so.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting to see them and their parents, and we went out for pizza.
Yeah, well, that's always good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, here comes Alan. Let's see here.
There
We got Alan coming in here. Let's see if it is Alan. There we go. Come on, Alan. There you are, Alan. Hi there, Alan. How are you?
There we go.
I'm doing good. How you guys doing?
Yeah. Okay. So we don't have anybody. We don't have anybody to speak of tonight. So if in a few minutes we don't have a few more people, I'm gonna call it quits tonight.
Yeah.
All
You
right,
tired or what?
What?
Are you tired or just bored?
No, I would like some more callers, And
right.
and Thursday nights have turned into a nothing burger,
It's the three Jews.
Yeah, it's the three Jews. Now, unless you want to hear three Jews talking about the Pope, you better call now.
Now we'll talk about pills and ailments and things that nobody cares about.
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah. My back's been killing me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. My knee hurts.
Yeah, how you doing? How's your health, Jeff?
I'm doing good today.
Yeah.
Good today. That's a good Jew answer.
Yeah, really.
Good.
Most Jews at our age, if they don't wake up with an ache or a pain, they figure they're probably going to die that day.
Well,
Yeah.
when I get up, it's always a pain.
Your what do you call it? Your thing is kind of going. Alan, it was kind of flashing in and out, but now it's okay.
Okay, good.
Yeah, there was some problem there.
Huh.
How come your picture isn't wider?
Me? I don't know.
Now, there. It just clipped. Did you see it do it?
No.
Did anybody else see it do it?
I'm moving back and forth, but I don't know why it's not wider. That's a interesting.
Well, anyway, so my whole day was going to the dentist.
Okay.
Like that.
Yeah.
Look at the video.
Do you know what it cost me to go down to my dentist today? I was taking Lyft. It used to cost me what, $28? Was $50 today. What has happened? What's different?
I don't know.
Yeah.
They're very expensive.
Huh?
It's very expensive.
Everything's getting very
Dentist.
expensive.
The dentist is.
I think I'll just decide not to spend money anymore.
Is this better?
Well, I can just buy simple stuff. For years I lived when I was in the Navy, and I was at the Armed Forces Radio and Television Service in Hollywood. I subsisted entirely on Kraft macaroni and cheese. So why don't I go back to that? I enjoyed it. I loved it. I ate it every day. I found a way to make it really good. I would take it. I would boil the macaroni, and then I would drain it. Then I would throw it into a bowl. Then that grated cheese stuff they had?
Yeah.
I would open a packet of that, but before I would open the packet of that, I would put about a half a stick of butter in the macaroni and stir it around till it disappeared, and then I would dump in the cheese, I don't know what you call that, powder, and I would then stir that around, and it was really good. It was
You're
really
a real
good.
chef.
I was a real chef with Kraft macaroni and cheese, and I lived on that for 2 years.
You could probably get it for the microwave oven now. You could probably do it in a microwave oven now that you couldn't do then.
No, I couldn't do that because I'd have to boil the macaroni, and you can't boil the macaroni in a very well in a microwave, can you?
Yeah.
No, you can't.
I make these macaroni and spaghetti sauce little kits, and you boil the macaroni, put water up to a certain line, and you boil it for a couple minutes, like 3 minutes, and it softens up the macaroni, and then you pour off the water, and you put.
Is that by putting it in the microwave? You mean?
Yeah. And then you put the sauce in, you put it back in the microwave for 30 seconds, and you got your spaghetti and sauce.
Yeah. Anyway.
It's not what I would call very good food. But the little macaroni and cheese was not very good, but compared to some of the stuff you probably had to eat in the military back then.
Hey, I was a young guy at the time. It didn't matter what I ate, okay?
Yeah.
Could eat slop. But
I can hardly eat as many things as I used to.
Now join the club.
Too many. Don't eat this thing.
well,
don't
today,
eat
Marjorie, I came back
the
from
whole
the
list.
I came back from the dentist, and that's no fun coming back from the dentist, right? And she says to me, "Let's go out and eat." And I went, "Well, but I don't know if I want to go out and eat."
Yeah, you're numb.
Yeah, and I hadn't eaten yet today, and when I haven't eaten, hi Tom, when I haven't eaten, what the problem is that if I get really lightheaded, if I haven't eaten, so I forgot to eat. So then when she said, "Come on, let's walk up a block," I said, "I don't think I can do it. I'm just too lightheaded. I need something in my stomach to eat. So why don't you bring me back something?" But she wanted to go out and eat, and I'm tired of oddly enough, I'm tired of eating out, and I'm tired of ordering out. What else can I do? I don't know. So
You have to get another wife.
get another wife.
Wife who likes to cook.
Right. Hello to Tom Yamaguchi. Hello there, and hello to Josh. So, anybody have any thoughts about the new Pope?
God, I hope he's not pro-Trump.
Apparently you don't read the news.
Apparently, I don't.
Apparently you don't, because you'd know he's not pro-Trump.
Well, that's a good thing then. I like this guy.
That
already.
he has been retweeting tweets that are anti-Trump up until just recently.
And anti-vax.
And J.D. Vance, he actually made his own, rather than retweeting something, he made his own, in which he said to J.D. Vance, if you're going to be, I don't know what he said exactly, but it was kind of akin to, if you're going to be religious, if you're going to care about God, you're going to care about people,
Yeah.
And he actually wrote that, I think, just last week, something like that. Apparently, he didn't think he was going to be Pope, I guess. I don't know.
And who knows? Supposedly, Francis had taken this guy under his wing, and it sounds like there was a lot of politicking going on before Francis died. I thought it was interesting what I'm hearing, because Francis actually picked a lot of the cardinals that voted. So he might be pretty decent.
I think he's going to be very good. I mean, think about it. To begin with, the guy is what, just 69, right?
Yeah.
So as popes go, he's pretty young. All right.
He's younger than me.
Huh?
He's younger than me.
He's younger than me. He's younger than me.
Younger than me.
He's younger, yeah. So I think he's kind of a modern pope. I mean, he has certain. I mean, who was it that? What did they say? Oh God, it was on the Daily Show. What did she say? Said the only pope that probably knows something. I can't remember now, but it was a matter of age, and the fact that they're young enough to kind of be hip to stuff. I mean, he's a guy who enjoys
Baseball.
baseball. Yeah,
That's right.
he likes
White
baseball.
Sox fan.
He is a Sox fan. And what else? There were a couple other things about him that were kind of interesting that made him just very contemporary,
But what I read was that the Pope Leo the 13th was considered a reformist. So I think I'm going to go back and do some reading about Leo the 13th.
Yeah, yeah. Pope Leo was Jewish, wasn't he? I mean, with a name like Leo, he's got to be Jewish.
Let's fight. There's for a number of years I've been reading a comic strip. There's a cartoonist that actually did a comic strip about Pope Francis. It was bi-weekly.
Oh, really?
And so he had Pope Francis, and he had created a couple of other characters to interact with him.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was a Muslim woman from Somalia,
Mm-hmm.
who he rescued from being trafficked. And another was a Franciscan a brother named Leo. I thought that was interesting, that
Yeah.
the comic strip and this and reality would converge in that way.
Yeah, I think it's not. This is there's not going to be a nice relationship between Trump and this Pope,
I don't think so. No.
and especially J.D. Vance and the Pope.
Boy, did Trump throw J.D. Vance under the bus again.
How did he throw him under the bus?
He said that he thought that, for running in 2028, he put Marco Rubio first and then Vance second.
I don't think he put anybody first or
news,
no, he didn't put anybody first or second. I heard him mention it, and it was just that he was naming off some people, and I think
okay.
Vance came second in his.
NBC News said that he took him over.
Well, that's NBC News. What the hell,
Yeah, I mean, really. I mean, this is the Alex Bennett show, so.
Yes, you noticed.
I know
Anyway, hello, Josh.
Hi.
Your thoughts on the Pope?
I have absolutely none. I do not care about the Pope.
Well, you don't care about the Pope.
I don't care about the Catholic Church, and I do not care about the Pope, period.
Well, I don't care about the Catholic Church. I don't normally care about the Pope, but the Pope is a world presence. And sometimes he can say things that will change stuff. you know, and so therefore, it is an important thing. Granted, you and I are probably, I would say, atheist, right? You know, and we really don't think that we should put much worthiness into what the Pope thinks or doesn't think, but he does influence 1.2 billion people in this world, and so therefore he is a world leader.
And the fact that he wrote a major paper on climate change, I mean, that was really profound.
Who
I
this
think,
guy? This guy?
yeah, Francis. Yeah, he
Not
Laudato Si.
oh,
Francis is dead, Tom.
I know, but he wrote a paper about climate change. So this was a very significant thing.
when did he
And,
write that?
Oh, 5-6 years ago.
Oh,
So
okay.
before he died. Okay.
And there's also a documentary movie that's made about that called The Letter,
Hmm.
and it's really good too. My Quaker meeting looked at it, watched it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the fact that that he's probably one of the most significant popes, definitely in my lifetime. I mean, once again, I'm a former Catholic. I left Catholicism. I didn't care about Catholicism. But if you look at other popes, John the 23rd probably has had the most the best impact of all the modern popes. I mean, he really radically changed the church. But yeah, but there have been some real losers like Benedict and
Oh, there have been some terrible ones. Pope Pius.
Pius was collaborated with the Nazis.
Well, he collaborated with Mussolini because he wanted to make sure the Vatican didn't get taken over by Mussolini. You know. So, I mean, they're like people here in this country are like kissing Donald Trump's ass because they don't want their company to be on the outs with it.
Merger. CBS wants, or Paramount wants their merger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people are saying to CBS, if you make a settlement with Donald Trump over that 60 Minutes thing, you're making a wrong move. You know, you're only emboldening him.
Yeah.
You know. So, a lot of people in the industry are saying, don't do it. You know. But she just wants to sell the damn place and get her money and leave. You know. Sherry Redstone. Yeah, what the hell, you know. But I think that it's important. I mean, I think that Pope Francis I liked. I didn't feel he was radical enough. I think he should have taken the church far more in another direction than it had gone. But he did what he could do and get away with, because I don't think that just because you're the Pope, you can get away with everything.
Right.
You know, I'm the Pope, I'm infallible, therefore, you know, we're not going to do this on Thursdays or something like that, you know. He doesn't have that. He has to deal with the rest of the church when he does something. So I think he did what he could do, you know.
There's a conspiracy theory about, remember the first John Paul who died like a month into office? In fact, there's a book.
That was Pope John Paul Ringo, right?
Yeah, George Ringo, right? There was a conspiracy theory. Actually, there's a book about. There was a belief among people that he was going to liberalize the church's teachings on birth control, and that the theory was that he got murdered before he could get a chance to do that. But
didn't Francis change the whole attitude about that?
What's that?
Didn't Pope Francis change the attitude about birth control?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
You see, I mean, a church, when it wants to become modern, should understand why certain rules were made in that church. Like, for instance, I'm not kosher because kosher really existed at a time when if you ate any of those foods, it'd kill you.
Right.
You know, But now, in this day and age, we know all that. We know how to solve the problem. We know that you have to, like, make sure that you boil shrimp and this and that and the other thing, and
Pork
you're
very
not gonna
well.
you're not gonna die. You're not gonna die from
Right.
eating pork.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, worms.
Yeah, yeah. Times change, and I always said about about Jews that we really should do away with the whole kosher thing. That just doesn't make sense, except that maybe a restaurant. It doesn't make sense, and a lot of the things in the Catholic Church don't make sense anymore either, because originally I think the reason why they didn't believe in birth control was because they wanted as many Catholics as it was humanly possible to have. And so therefore
Yeah, I
you
think
have
you're
these
right.
Catholic families having like 7 kids,
Yeah, I have relatives. I have relatives that had like 5, 6, 7 kids. So
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, come on, the Catholics, let the Mormons take over that, okay? I can't believe how many kids the Mormons have, for crying out loud. It's ridiculous.
Crazy.
Anyway, so I just feel that it's good that we have to begin with, we have an American Pope, although he hasn't lived
a U.S. Pope.
a U.S. Pope, born in the U.S. He's an American.
I mean, when you say that he's the first American, well, Francis was an American. He was
Well,
a
South American, but I mean, but this is the first American Pope. Although I think he's been living in Peru, hasn't he?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was his diocese and all of that.
Peru, quite a bit.
Yeah, but he was a Chicago native, and it'd be interesting to see how that manifests itself. You know what I saw today that is just hilarious? You have Newsmax, and these people are just lowlifes, okay? You know what they were complaining about today with the new Pope? That when he spoke today to the crowd, he spoke in Spanish and he spoke in Italian too. Yeah, Italian. But he didn't speak English. And that's his native language. What a slam to the United States that is, that he didn't say it in English. Maybe he didn't want to. He speaks how many, 7 languages or something? Let him choose the ones he wants to use.
Well, I heard 3. I don't know. I heard English, Spanish, and Italian.
Oh, okay.
But I know he might speak more, but I don't know. That's the only ones I heard about.
Well, he was speaking to the crowd in Rome. They're
Yeah,
Italian.
Italian, yeah.
And I imagine he was speaking to Spanish people because they were close by, and he didn't need to speak English. Somebody will translate it. Who cares? But these people over at Newsmax are going, he has no respect for his own home country. Yeah, you pieces of crap. Did you hear, by the way, that, not Newsmax, but America One, is the other right-wing network, television network? Trump wants to have them run Voice of America.
Nice.
And these are people who are just, the worst. They just lie about everything. In fact, they got sued by one of the election machine companies, the same as Fox, for lying about all of that.
Dominion voting systems, yeah.
Huh? Yeah.
Dominion voting systems.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, Trump wants to use them to run Voice of America.
Sounds good.
He also wants to open up Alcatraz as a prison again.
Yes, yes.
Yes. That one is a completely uninformed idea.
Yeah.
Have you ever been out there lately?
Not lately.
It's a fixer-upper.
It's a museum.
Hmm?
It's a museum. It's a historical place.
Well, they call it a museum now. And I think it's an Indian museum, isn't it? Part of it.
Part of it, yeah, where the American Indian movement took over. Yeah, they preserved a lot of that, and create a whole exhibit on it. Yeah.
Yeah. But he wants to turn it back into a prison. Do you know how much that's going to cost?
He's a putz.
Probably more than his
They'll
military
probably want to
parade.
live there next. Have a West Coast prison for him to live in.
Yeah.
I don't think he will. No.
No.
Anyway, it's it's really that notion is idiotic.
And then there was, I don't know which conservative news network pundit was commenting on that. One guy says, "Oh, this is a great location because it's out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean."
It's out in the middle of the Pacific
In the middle
Ocean.
of the Pacific Ocean, yes.
Who said that?
I don't know. It was somebody. It was a recording I was listening to on Sirius XM. It's like, yeah, it was not very well.
Hawaii?
Yeah.
Is that Hawaii?
And
Yeah,
also,
Hawaii's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Yeah.
also, they want to start deporting people to where is it? Libya is the latest one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is one of the worst countries in the world for human rights. I mean, why are we sending people? I mean, isn't the rule for deportation that you deport people to the country of origin?
Yeah.
Isn't that the rule? Not that you, deport them to a country where they, Libya? Come on. So anyway, that's all insane. But I just think the idea that we got a pope who's an American, that's nice. Root for the home team, all right? And the fact that he doesn't like Trump and he doesn't like J.D. Vance, that's fine with me. He's my kind of pope, all right?
Boy, for all of us not liking the Pope or caring much about him, we've been talking about him for a half hour now.
No, I care about him. It's Josh that kind of dismissed him. I feel that he's he's a world leader, okay? Whether you want to believe it or not.
More than Trump.
Well, he has more people following him than Trump did. He has 1.2 billion Catholics around the world that pay attention to what he says and to his opinion.
And a lot of people speak Spanish.
Yeah.
A lot of those people speak Spanish
Yeah.
who are Catholics.
Yeah. I just feel that it's, that it at least it's good we have a guy who's on our side. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Wait, picked him on what? The third vote, something like that. That's
Second, I thought.
no, it was a third.
Third?
There was a black smoke today. Yeah. The black smoke yesterday, and then today the third ballot, I think. I'm surprised we didn't have. Who's that guy who does all those polls and everything on MSNBC?
Yeah.
That moron. I'm surprised he wasn't doing it about the Pope. Maybe he was. I wasn't watching closely enough. Anyway. So what's new in your part of the world, Josh?
New, I would say nothing's new.
Nothing?
Status quo here.
No big deals happening there? Or people yelling and screaming about something? Or
No, not in my world.
you just take it easy, right?
Yeah, just working on my own stuff. I mean, nothing's really new with me. I guess I was a little surprised. I thought, the Trump team made this big deal a week or so ago about all this Veterans Day stuff and changing the name, and we don't celebrate our victories, and all this. And I checked the newspaper headlines and whatnot a few times today, and I didn't see him say anything today about it being VE Day. So maybe he forgot about all that.
Was today VE Day?
Maybe is, yeah.
Oh, it is, isn't it? Yes. Yes.
Maybe he,
Oh, no, it was mentioned today.
maybe he mentioned it, but
No, it was
they
mentioned. I'll
held
tell
the
you how
Trump
it was.
talk like
I'll
they were
tell you
gonna
how
do
it was mentioned. Our wonderful president decided to hold a press conference in the Oval Office, where he was on the phone to the Prime Minister of England, who said, "We've agreed on a trade agreement." Now, if you paid any attention to this, there's really no major agreement going on there, you know. But he then, when he was speaking, he was talking about on this occasion of VE Day, which is VE Day is a big day in England and Europe because it's Victory in Europe. Ours is what do you call it? When we invaded the beaches at Normandy, we celebrate that.
D-Day.
He did, right?
Yeah, D-Day. So it was a big deal. So he talked about it. The prime
The
minister.
ambassador brought it up.
Huh?
And then the ambassador brought it up, and he kind of sculled right over it and started talking about how good a deal he made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, did you see Trump during that whole thing?
Yeah.
He was falling asleep.
Mm-hmm.
You know, anything where he has to pay attention to anything, he immediately starts dozing off.
If it's not about him, he's not interested.
Yeah, but anyway, so he said that it was. Now he said a couple of days ago that we're going to have a big special announcement this week. Big one, biggest probably in the last 50 years. Blah 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 blah. Was this it?
I don't know.
Because this wasn't a very big announcement.
I mean, the biggest announcement he could make right now is that he's resigning.
Well, I don't know that I would. I don't know if I want him to resign.
No.
No.
Who would we have to talk about?
Well, J.D. Vance. And if J.D. Vance somehow fell down a flight of stairs, we'd then have to talk about the, what's his name?
Johnson.
Johnson. So I mean, come
Couldn't be
on.
any worse.
There's a whole list of people ahead of him before we can get to some kind of Democrat. And then we probably
Well,
have Chuck
J.D.
Schumer.
If J.D. Vance became president, if something happened to Trump, he would pick a vice president.
Yeah.
That person, if something happened to J.D. Vance, would be.
Well, he's not required to pick a vice president.
He is or he's not?
He's not.
Yeah.
Not.
Oh, okay.
Because
Yeah, there's an amendment that there is a new. This was it 25th? The 25th Amendment. That's how Rockefeller became vice president.
oh, really?
Yeah, the 25th Amendment, because after Kennedy was assassinated and Johnson was in, they realized that there was no mechanism for having another vice president before the next election. So they actually created one where the new vice president is nominated and confirmed by the Congress.
I just thought it automatically, unless he appointed one, it fell to the Speaker of the House.
Well, if vote become vacant real soon, then the Speaker of the House does become president. But this is a mechanism to allow Josh. I'm right. This allows them to have a
Let's
vice
go to
president until the next election.
Let's go to our authority, Josh. Josh.
Yeah, I mean, the line of succession is only if all the vacancies happen, before other vacancies are filled. So if a president died today, there's 3 years and 9 months left of a term. They're not going to, wait that out with no vice president. The vice president will assume the office, nominate a new vice president that Congress would have to approve, because it's not just Senate confirmation in that special case. if I remember correctly. The Congress approves, and then if they approve, that person is sworn in as Vice President of the United States, and we're right back where we started from. Now,
It was used twice because that's how Ford became vice president. Because Agnew resigned,
Mhm.
if
Ford was approved as a vice
But
president,
did he have to
and
be a?
then he became president.
Wait a minute. Did
And
he?
they picked the Rockefeller.
Well, wait a minute. Did
Yeah.
he have to? You say he was approved as vice president. Does he have to be approved by somebody like the Congress or whatever?
Congress, both House and Senate.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
Can I get
Because
can I get
that happened so long. That happened
I'll
so.
get my Constitution. I'll be right back.
Yeah, but that happened so long ago that I hardly remember how it went down. All I remember is that Ford became the only president of the United States never elected to the office.
That's right.
You know.
you know what the scenarios that people are talking about is if the vacancy were to happen before the office of the vice presidency were filled, for example.
Yeah.
So, president resigns or dies, the vice president becomes president. He has not either he hasn't nominated one or yet, or he has and they're not confirmed. So 3 days later, the new president who just assumed office becomes incapacitated, dies, whatever. Then
Okay.
it's Speaker of the House.
Okay.
It's or the president and the vice president die at the same time in an accident or an attack, etc. I mean,
Now, is it true? Is it true like it was on that TV show that they had a few years ago?
Designated survivor.
You have a designated survivor that doesn't go to the State of the Union address in case somebody decides to blow up the whole building.
Yeah. It's usually the Secretary of Transportation. I don't know why they pick on him. But anyway, 25th Amendment, Section 2, whenever there is a vacancy in the office of Vice President, the President shall nominate a Vice President who shall take office upon confirmation by a majority vote of both houses of Congress.
Okay.
Yeah.
Simple.
And a lot of it is also regarding the removal of president, because they said when Kennedy was assassinated, there was a fear. Well, what if he lived but he was a vegetable? What do we do?
Yeah.
So
Make a salad. Make a salad.
Make it a salad, a presidential salad. Yeah.
What I'm trying to remember what happened when he got killed. Johnson became president.
Right.
But nobody became vice president.
Yeah. Because we didn't have a 25th Amendment.
Okay.
The office was vacant until the next election.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the next election, though, was only about a year away, wasn't it? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, because he was assassinated in 63 and the next election was in 64.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Okay. So problem solved.
He became vice president.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So he effectively became the president with no with no VP.
with no VP. Yeah.
So he for a year or more. Yeah.
But if he had died, then it would have gone to I guess, the Speaker of the House.
The House, right?
Yeah. So what they did eventually was just say, let's take care of the situation where there's no vice president.
Right.
And then of course, Ford appointed, and then of course Ford appointed Rockefeller, and he became vice president.
And then
the idea there is to always keep people in the two executive offices that have been voted on by all the people.
Yeah.
Or all the people's representatives.
Yes.
So if the the president and the vice president, the Johnson situation, the Speaker of the House had become president, it's a little bit against some of the American values, because the Speaker of the House, no matter what party or who they are, were elected by,
One district,
50,000 people in a district in, Nebraska or whatever, or not even that many people maybe. So a winning number in one district, it's not a chance for all of the, the people. And the executive is set up for direct election now. So, and that spirit, even though it might not always have come through at the polls, if both houses of Congress have to vote for it, the people's representatives have voted that person as approved, and the people always hold the power over those representatives, at the in the last analysis. So, that's some of the spirit behind the 25th, is not only to keep continuity of government, which there are some federal statutes that they passed too, around the continuity of government situation, who is in control of what and when, and crises and things like that, but also to keep the spirit, the democratic spirit, with that amendment, that the people should always be the ones to choose the executive, because it's the only office that we have that's voted on by all the people.
Right.
Power to the people. Right on.
At least the people that choose to vote. I mean,
Yeah.
You know what I heard? I heard an interesting fact today about my apartment house. Now, this apartment house was built in 1900. And it really had a lot of wealthy people in the building, because each of these apartments were considered to be like a mansion. But it was a new idea called an apartment building, in which all these mansions were just stacked up at one on top of another. And as a matter of fact, this place that I have here, actually there's a door right over here, a doorway over here. It used to go all the way over to the other side. So it was gigantic. Well, a lot of these homes became available I just found this out from a woman who knows the history of the building. In 1912, quite a few apartments became available in this building. Why was that?
The Titanic went down and a bunch of people
There
died.
were people in this building who lived in this building who died in the Titanic.
Wow.
Yeah. So every now and then I'll come up on it with a piece of information I never knew before, and I find it completely fascinating. But when it came to presidents and what happened back when Kennedy was shot, I mean, I forgot all about it, what went down. All I know is that Johnson took over.
Yeah. And he did a pretty good job.
Oh, he did a brilliant job. They didn't think much of him, because he was a Southerner. He was a Southern senator, I believe. Yep. And he as soon as Kennedy died and he became president, he just took it as a act that he had to take over for Kennedy and complete the work that Kennedy was doing.
Right.
Or trying to do. Probably Kennedy would never have gotten a lot of that stuff passed on his own, but when he died, and you had Johnson there, who never took no for an answer, man. He knew how to bully these people in Congress. He'd call them into the Oval Office and keep the door open to the toilet while he took a dump, just to intimidate them. Just to intimidate them. And he got more civil rights legislation passed than any president in the history of the United States. And he was a Southerner.
Yeah.
So I mean, how great is that?
Yeah, wonderful.
It was wonderful.
It's a great story. The passing of the Civil Rights Act of '64. I remember reading a book after hearing the author on C-SPAN, and the book came out like on the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Civil Rights Act, and it's a great story. It shows you what a master politician Johnson was, because one of the points of the author was he knew when to step back and not force things. He knew exactly when he was needed to let others take control.
But he was also good at intimidating people too.
Well, he could, yeah, but he recognized that attempting to intimidate people could have the opposite effect. So it's a great story. I'm trying. I think the book was called. Oh boy, I forgot the name of the book. But it's about the signing or the passage of the which started with the fact that he was taking over this legacy that JFK wanted to pass the Civil Rights Act, and then Johnson took it over
Right.
and said,
It-
we're going to do this.
Josh, as a kind of historian, how would you place Johnson in all of this? Do you agree with us about him?
Probably. Yeah, I mean, Johnson was a very effective president legislatively.
Hmm?
Uh, he was a complicated person. I like, Johnson's presidency a lot. I like Johnson's ways a lot, but, some of the things that he did were a little odd. I mean, he certainly struggled a little bit with foreign policy. He tried to do the right thing. Uh, but Vietnam was a tangled web that obviously drags down his legacy that he couldn't.
Mhm.
He got to a point where he felt like he, could not return, and kept going to save American face, if you will. Not really just his. I don't think he was too worried about how himself, but he was worried about the country, and as we know, that turned out not to be the right decision. But in some of his defense, he's not the only one who made it. He's not the only one who believed it. It wasn't as if he walked that path by himself, right? I mean,
Right.
there were tons of other people walking it with him. But domestically, he was very successful legislatively. Um, he did push people when needed, but he had a way about him where he didn't he tried not to push people. He really
Mm-hmm.
charmed people in sort of an aggressive way,
Mm-hmm.
but he promised people a lot. He was one of the finer ones about understanding what power the executive did have and wielding it properly. He probably overreached sometimes, but I mean, when he wanted to vote for the civil rights bill, he would remind a certain congressman that the federal government was about to pay for a new water treatment plant somewhere. And, boy, wouldn't it be nice to have that built in your district? And,
Mm-hmm.
One of the
things
yeah,
like that,
one of the interesting things about that book, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but he established relationships with very conservative Republican Congress, both the Senate and House. And one of them, of course, was Everett Dirksen,
Mm-hmm.
very conservative, but Everett Dirksen was pro civil rights. And so because there were all these Southern Democrats that would no way vote for the Civil Rights Act of 64, he was able to get it through with the help of Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But that was a different time. In those
That was a
days,
different time,
days
and
when
that was when he
yeah.
that was when he said, "I think we've lost, the Democratic Party has lost the South," and they did, because then they went over to they all
Yeah,
went
but
to Republican.
he worked with those people because he was able to do that. But I think Johnson's vision was that he understood was that the civil rights thing was going to come eventually. Okay, I mean, if he didn't do it and it had taken another 10 years, it was coming. But if his party, the Democratic Party, fought it and fought it and fought it, and they didn't get it done, and the Republican Party eventually got enough power to do it because the country moved that far, that was going to be a positive for that party. They were going to take over and control the electorate. So his point was, this is already, and this is the argument I make sometimes with Democrats now, right? Like, this is already coming anyway. We should be the ones who hop in the car and drive the people to it, or else we're just going to be left standing back here. That was his point, was, I'm going to drag the party kicking and screaming into this, and they sure as hell ain't going to thank me for it. But he was right.
Jeff, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I remember that Johnson was a terrific guy as in the Congress.
Yeah.
And he was already been a great manager of people who were senators and congressmen.
But I
And
don't think you would have ever pegged him as the guy who would pass more civil rights legislation than any president in history. You just wouldn't
no,
have thought that he would do it.
but he had never done that at that point. And then all of a sudden, I don't know, it's
But,
because
but
JFK had
yeah.
presented that thing, and he was his VP, and he decided he had a. He says, "I'm going to make it happen."
For people who
Poor
are
guy.
listening who don't understand what we're saying, is the fact that he could rally together both Republicans and Democrats to get something passed was because that was a time when you could do that.
Right.
You know, they were not just because you were Republican didn't mean you were going to be reasonable, and not every Republican were in lockstep with each other, and neither were the Democrats. So you could pass certain legislation, and you could get a lot of stuff passed. You know, and that's he was a man who very much lived up to what he had to for his time. You know, so anyway.
Well, he's
And
been
Josh,
impressive.
yeah, Josh reminded me of something else. Talk about people who have drugged the party into civil rights.
Mm-hmm.
Even before Johnson was Hubert Humphrey.
Mm-hmm.
Hubert Humphrey gave a speech at the Democratic Convention in '48, and he says we got to walk. I think it was walking the sunshine or something like that, and he really put himself out as a and ironically then talking about vice presidents, who became Johnson's vice president, Hubert Humphrey.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean he used Humphrey for uh smoothing over things with the more liberal wing of his party when he would water down a civil rights bill or so, because the civil rights bill went through several iterations. It was passed in several different bills. The Voting Rights Act. That's what I'm saying. It wasn't just one big beautiful bill.
Right.
There came several different policy or legislative acts that slowly
Yeah,
gave
they had
civil
to.
rights over a few years.
Right.
And
Yeah.
at times he watered some of them down because that's what needed to be done in order to get them passed at the
Right.
time. But he had been majority leader for a long time prior to the vice presidency.
Right.
So I think he was the longest serving majority leader at up until then, maybe if I remember right.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Might have been passed now, I'm not sure, but as majority leader in the Senate for a long time, because at that time, the Democrats held congressional majorities for long periods.
50 years. Yeah.
Let me
Right.
ask you this. Let me ask you
He was
this.
very familiar with
Since Johnson, has there been any other president as good as he was?
as far as legislatively getting things passed, you mean?
Just being president, being president.
Ironically, Biden. I mean, he got us out of
Right.
he got us out of a pandemic that
Yeah, but perceptively, he isn't looked upon that way.
well, he
You
will
know.
be in the
Well,
future.
and
I mean, Obama was a fairly decent president. I think in his second term, not in his first.
He did the ADA or the ACA in his first term.
I
Mhm.
mean,
That's
Yeah.
significant.
but in fairness, in some, Johnson when he left in '68 wasn't exactly, in 1969 wasn't exactly the most loved man in America or anything. I don't think people
Well, you know
hate
why?
him or
Do you
anything,
know
but
why he decided not to run?
well, I mean, Vietnam,
Well, you're right about that. But the real reason was that one night he was watching television, and Walter Cronkite came out against the war in Vietnam. And he looked at somebody and said, "If I've lost Walter Cronkite, I've lost America."
I mean,
Hmm.
it's the natural stress and things.
Wow.
But I mean, his approval on that situation, it was low. And I mean, the things that some of these things that presidents do. I mean, the big Civil Rights Act and all that. by 1968, people were like, man, that was 3 years ago. We don't care about that. That's done already. I mean, that was great. You did good, but what about today? It's a lot like sports. I mean, we're glad you won the Super Bowl 3 years ago, but that has nothing to do with the fact that we've won, 0 games this year or whatever. That doesn't really buy you much anymore in big time politics.
Well, what was the other big thing that Johnson got done for Kennedy after Kennedy's death?
Well, he made sure that NASA's mission
That's right.
continued.
And that we went
Kennedy.
along with that timetable that
Yep.
Kennedy had set by saying we will get here by the end of the day. We'll get to the moon by the end of the decade.
NASA's mission continued with full support, basically. I mean, I think NASA had some rough times, obviously.
Right.
They had some terrible PR
Yep.
in the 60s, that they had to work through, but they made it. But Johnson was very effective. I mean, president since him. I mean, Biden was very effective legislatively. As far as just being a good president, I mean, Johnson was pretty solid. I mean, who have we had since then that was maybe as good, in the overall, legislatively, foreign policy wise, and all that, I do think Clinton had a lot of pretty good success.
Mm-hmm.
How
about Republicans? Were there any good Republicans?
I mean,
Don't say don't.
Reagan did, but they seem to have kind of looked down on him now. So, it's
How about H.W. Bush?
Read my lips.
Yeah.
Well, H.W. Bush was not as bad as his son. His
Right.
son was terrible.
Yeah.
Because he just said
his economic policies were not great, neither one of them. And then, the Afghanistan and Iraq wars not being under any kind of control when they were handed to Obama. You can argue what he did with them. That's fine. That was his own 2 terms. That's fair. But, that mission was not narrowly defined for victory the way that it should have been at the outset. And therefore, it became so wide, so fast that at that point, no one could ever tell you what victory was going to look like in Iraq. And so, all those presidents had, of course, had their trouble. I mean, Clinton was pretty highly successful and survived, a lot of turmoil and things. The country was pretty well off when he left, budgetary and economically and things like that. I mean, his personal problems, really don't have anything to do with that. Although he did have them, so they have to be weighed. I mean, you can't just leave that off the table. It is part of it. It was a distraction and an issue for the country.
Yeah.
It has to be dealt with.
Well, I just say to people, if you are listening to us, you're going, Johnson who? And if you don't believe me, most people do go Johnson who. I mean, anything is not within their lifetime, they don't pay attention to, and they really should. I know you do, Josh, almost with a fixation. But you care about what happened before you were born, and I think everybody should care. The old saying being, of course, that those who don't pay attention to history are doomed to repeat it. Anyway, hey, listen, everybody, good show tonight. Nice having you here. Turned out there was just Jeff, and then all of a sudden one person after another. And we had a really nice group here. Thank you, Jeff, for being here. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Josh. Really great having you here. Thanks to Tom Yamaguchi, who always classes up the place. You too, Charlie. Always nice. What resistance is not futile. What is
it? Divided by current.
Boom.
Yeah.
And finally, of course, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin, for being here. Appreciate it. Okay, everybody give a big wave goodbye, and I'll give a big wave goodbye at you. Okay, bye-bye, everybody. That's our citizen panel for tonight. There'll be another one forming right after this over there on the intersection with Amy Manuel. You can go to our Gabnet page at gabnet.net. Bottom of the third column is my name and Amy's name. Click on Amy's name, and that will take you to her, what do you call it? Her Zoom thing, okay? The Zoom thing. Boy, I'm really technical these days. Anyway, that's it for tonight. I'll see you tomorrow night, same time, same station in life. In the meantime, as always, if you see her, of course, tell her I love her, okay? Good night, everybody.